Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Tuesday talk. I'm interviewing my friend Stacey Brown here today. I will let Stacey introduce herself here. Let's do this thing. So today we are talking about the onboarding process. We have an expert in this field, Stacey, joining us today. So Stacey, if you would please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Jen. I am Stacey Brown. I am the RightStart manager for Right at Home.
Okay. And what does RightStart mean?
RightStart I currently work with the owners when they get approved after Discovery Day. I work with them through their journey to get them through their training through what we call Residence Week. And then about 3 to 6 months after Residence Week, when they're open and doing well, then they transition to their business coach.
Okay, so specifically for today, we can kind of go back and forth between new territory onboarding and resale buyer onboarding. So RightStart is the process that we call for onboarding new franchise owners into the system who are starting new territories, new businesses from scratch. We also have an onboarding process for buyers who are purchasing resale opportunities. The resale buyer onboarding process. We don't really have a fancy name for it. I suppose you could call it RightStart Resale. That gets kind of confusing. So we're just going to focus on that RightStart, which means new owners, new territories, and everything that goes into that. I'm excited to talk to you today because the audience of people who are watching this are thinking about joining the Right at Home system. So none of them have owned a Right at Home franchise before. So as you know, working with buyers who join the Right at Home system, it's nothing but new to them. So they really rely very heavily on you and your team to get them on the right path from the beginning. So let's start there. Let's pretend that someone has just signed their franchise agreement. They paid their franchise fee. They are officially in as a franchise owner. What happens first?
We are so excited. Once they sign their franchise agreement and they're approved after Discovery Day, they kind of come over to our portfolio and we meet with them right off the bat. Usually within the first day or two, we give them a call, work with the buyer or the brand new owner, and we introduce them. What does it look like? What does the next 6 months journey look like? And so it's a very high level. And then we get our first meeting on the books. So what we do is each call, we're going to introduce you into the Right at Home system. We love to slowly phase owners into that system. We reference this as milestone calls. So each milestone, we may introduce labor. Next milestone, we may introduce payroll or our operations system. So we bring on subject matter experts onto each one of our calls to really train and talk to that during that process. Our goal is to slowly introduce each process, each topic along the way. So that way, by the time they come to Omaha to do their residence training, they've heard most of the language. They're somewhat familiar with the business. And once they leave Omaha from Residence Week, we now are getting them ready to open their doors because they're familiar with a lot of the terminology.
Okay, so I know because I've nearly memorized the entire franchise agreement that it's a requirement that we want the businesses to be open within 6 months of them signing their franchise agreement. So the buyer knows that is a standard. We know that is a standard. I'm assuming that's kind of how you craft this onboarding schedule, knowing if they sign their franchise agreement today, okay, we're going to work in partnership. We're going to work together to try to get your business open within the next 6 months. Is that correct?
Correct. So what we like to do is we like to sometimes work a little bit backwards, right? So we know the day that they sign that franchise agreement, but then we also know the 6 months to that date. We try to keep it within those lines, and then we work with the license because sometimes the license can play into that. And so we're working with our license specialist to really get them off to the races right away so they can start working on those licenses. So we have that end date, but then we kind of back it up to make sure that we're getting them to Residence Week. Best case scenario is 3 to 4 months in after signing the franchise agreement, they're coming to Residence Week, so they're ready to open the doors right away.
Okay, so the timing, We want franchise owners to come here to Omaha. It's a week of in-person training. Timing, we want that to happen shortly before they open their doors. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've found a lot of success if those owners, they're very well prepared when they come to Residence Week, because once they leave Residence Week, we're excited. We want to get the ground running, right? We want to get this business open, and the knowledge is right there. So we have found a lot of success to make sure that that business is ready to open right when they're leaving Residence Week.
Okay, got it. And I'm doing a pre-work here. A question came in. As you were answering that question, it says, how many states have to have a license? Do you know that answer off the top of your head? Because I didn't. I'm counting right now.
I'm going to guess 60%, 60 to 70% is going to be
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 states, according to my cheat sheet here, are non-licensure states. But for the states that are licensure states, can you explain the level of support that Right at Home provides, helping franchise owners apply for their, so first of all, educating them on what it takes to apply for their license, and everything involved with applying for a license. That's a FAQ that we get. Like, I have no idea where to start, what to do, who's going to help me, what does that look like?
So one of the things I forgot to mention in the beginning is we have a to-do list that's very long, but it entails every single thing that the buyer or that the owner needs to walk through to get their business open. In the beginning stages are steps that we need to take to get ready to apply for the license. So we make sure to walk very close with that. We also have a license specialist in-house that myself and the owner work very closely with, and we also work with an outside agency that helps to keep a very close eye to make sure we're staying on top of those licenses and making sure that we're taking advantage of it and getting it as fast as possible. And that outside agency really understands that license process so well. So we've seen them. They've actually helped us get licensed even faster. So that way we can get the owner up and running quicker.
Yes. Yes, and another question came in while you were answering. It says, even with going through licensing, can I be up and running in 6 months? So to kind of rephrase that, could it potentially happen? You apply for your license on day one and 6 months later, you still don't have your license yet. Has that ever happened?
If we follow our process and we work very closely with our license specialists and our outside agency, we've had very good luck. So I don't want to say that there's always the one-offs, Jen, that are going to happen. Absolutely. Yep. But more times than not, I can tell you very less than on one hand that they have not gotten their license within. But it's usually we're in contact and we're doing everything else. So we may jump ahead a little bit to get these other pieces done. So that way, once they get their license, they're ready to go. They're ready to operate. So usually the timeline isn't extended too much.
Yes, and I will add on to what Stacey said. She's right. There have been a couple cases where we've gone beyond that 6-month window, but the actual wording in the franchise agreement does state, we want you to be open within 6 months, unless there's some type of delay as it relates to licensure. So, for example, if you're in a licensure state and it says it takes 9 months to obtain a license in that particular state, that right there, that's something that's out of our hands, that's out of your hands as the franchise owner. So you apply for your license, and sometimes it will go beyond that 6-month window. That's an exception to the rule, of course, if we're waiting on the state just simply to obtain that license, and there's nothing that we can do to speed that up. Okay. And it looks like we had a double question, so a couple people asked that question. So whoever asked that question, if you want us to elaborate more, just let us know. But I think we covered that question. Okay, I prep for these, and I'm like, here I'm going to talk to Stacey at 2:00. So there's a list of questions I want to ask you that I know others ask me as we go through the education and approval process. So question for you: how important is it for potential franchise owners at this point to fully understand financial needs and capital requirements? Okay, and I'll elaborate more on that. So we've got somebody who's starting up a brand new business. They're working with their development director. They go through the FDD. There's a chart in the FDD that shows these are the approximate startup costs in order to start up a right-at-home business. And, we approve them financially, but how important is it to really fully understand what it takes financially to start up a new business?
It is extremely important to follow those numbers and listen to those numbers because we've done a lot of research and worked with a lot of our local owners that are part of that startup to get to those numbers. Because once you open the doors, the last thing I want to be doing is having a conversation with an owner that says, you know what, I'm having a hard time keeping my lights on. I'm having a hard time doing this. So now their mindset is focused on how to keep their lights on instead of trying to grow their business. And ultimately, that's what they need to do. So making sure you have the right amount of money, funding in place to be able to open their business is really where we're seeing a lot of success with these owners that are, again, they're better prepared to enter the market, right? Their mindset is in a good mindset where they're not solely focused on what does it look like to pay my bills? I didn't have enough. I wasn't thinking about that. So I think it's a very, very important part.
Okay, perfect. And to kind of extend on that, we've really focused kind of on all right, so you're doing your due diligence, you sign your franchise agreement, you go through onboarding and training. Let's talk a little bit about Residence Week. What is the significance of Residence Week? It's a Monday through Friday in person here in Omaha. Leading up to that, you as the franchise owner, you're going to have regular milestone calls with Stacey and her team. You're going to have the full schedule, lots of education and training virtually leading up to that, which I do want to call out just the sheer time commitment. When you join the Right-at-Home system, the expectation is that you, as soon as you sign your franchise agreement, you're a franchise owner with Right-at-Home. So your full time and attention is on getting this business up and running. So we're going to do everything that we can to help and support you with that. The expectation is on your end, you are doing the same. So it's a time commitment for you to be dedicated to that schedule. We'll share a rough schedule with you on Discovery Day so you get a rough idea of what to expect. But leading up to Residence Week, that's the week of in-person training. So tell me a little bit about what happens during Residence Week.
Residence Week really does a great job of taking everything they have learned through those maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 months while they're leading up to Residence Week and taking it and learning it in person. We do a lot of role playing. How do we go out and sell? How do we go out and do those meet and greets with the clients and caregivers? So we do a lot of role playing like that. One of the biggest takeaways I tell all of my owners that's so important is the camaraderie that you get during Residence Week, right? You're really building a strong bond with everybody that's going through that training. Everybody's kind of in it in the same spot that you are in it. You also are working so closely with a lot of subject matter experts, whether or not it's from our finance area, our operations team. Everybody's there to meet them. You really get a feel for the true culture that sets Right-at-Home apart, that I think. So it's not a true, this is how you're going to run your operational software, but you get a feel of how you want your culture to be in your business, and then you get to connect with so many others while being in Omaha.
Okay, awesome. So that happens right before most of the people that I talk to, Residence Week, the last Residence Week we had, okay, hey, so when is your business slated to open? All of them are like, about the next week and a half, so it's their opening dates are like in the very near future once they leave Residence Week. So someone has just opened their doors. So at the beginning of the call, you said the first 3 to 6 months. So these franchise owners stay with you and your onboarding team even after their business opens. So tell me a little bit about what you do to help and support them. I'm a new franchise owner. My business has just opened today. So what do you do with me, a new franchise owner, to kind of set me up for those next 3 months? What are some of the KPIs? What are some of the things that we watch? How do we track the success of the business and the hours and the revenue? And what does all of that look like from a new owner point of view, you supporting those new owners right after they've opened their business?
So once we leave Residence Week, usually there's an opportunity for you to shadow or experience an in-office experience if you're opening a brand new territory that does not exist, that is always a great opportunity to see how does life actually work in a right at home office? What actually happens among these employees? So we have that. We're also working, if you're buying an existing that's already operating, so you're able to get in there and see that sometimes ahead of time. Once that business has officially transferred and it is now their business, we usually meet multiple times a week because there's a lot of questions that happen. Maybe we have questions on billing. We're not sure on how to do billing, not sure how to do payroll. We walk them through all of those steps. So we have people in-house that really do that. We then, once we get past maybe the first 2-3 weeks of operating that business, now we really start to talk about how many interactions did you have out there? What kind of sales and marketing have you done? Because that really is what's generating your business that's coming in, right? It's that out there visiting. So we talk about that interaction marketing component. We also, my life, what I love to ask for is, right, like how many clients did you onboard that week and how many caregivers did you onboard? Those seem to be really what helps you grow the business. It's the hours come, right? The business grows if you keep adding new and you retain those. And so those are usually the topic of conversations. And I'm usually meeting with owners, I would say multiple times a week. After, like I said, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in, we then have a standing every other week where all my owners that are currently in RightStart, they have a meeting for an hour and we all get together to talk about things that are going well, or maybe someone learned something different just owning a business. So it's a way to really connect with other owners, and I've found that the new owners really enjoy those meetings every other week.
Okay. In your opinion, what is more important when you first start your business? If you had to choose between the two, recruiting caregivers or finding new clients? Or is it an even tie?
I feel like that's a loaded question. So I'll answer it what I think. I think that we put such a heavy emphasis on recruiting caregivers, and we hear that there's a struggle to recruit. But what I'm seeing so often with new owners is we forget the importance of getting out there to sell our business, to talk about our business, to really get in with the home health, the hospitals, and the hospice companies. Yes, we need the caregivers, and the caregivers are the heart of our business. Caregivers, we can pay for job postings, right? We can really use our applicant tracking system to pull in.
Good point.
You can't pay someone to get out. So really getting out there, marketing 5-6 hours a day for the first full week, for the full week is really what we're seeing results for new owners. So I think that's crucial, that's missed.
Okay, perfect. And then I had another question for you. These people who have just joined Right at Home, they are joining a franchise system. And by definition, a franchise system is, it's a proven business model that's been in operations for multiple years. We've tried all the things. We have failed. We learned from our mistakes. We've got the wins. All this history. In summary, we have a system. How often do you see brand new franchise owners kind of, I'm a little, Stacey, I got it. I'm going to do my own thing. How often do you see that happen?
I see it happen less than 20% of the time. That what we call it not following the model. It's kind of the wording that we use in RightStart is, are you going to follow the model or do you have another idea? And so it usually happens 20% of the time. I've yet to see someone pull through. It's usually they come back and go, hey, I tried it. It stays like, let's go back to this. And that's okay. Like, that's the beauty of this system is you can try those other little pieces, but people always come back to be, okay, how do we onboard? How do we retain our clients? Because there's obviously a proven model within Right at Home.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And a question came in. As you're answering that question, it says, how long do you personally work with new franchise owners? When is a more permanent coach assigned?
So we work that new coach or your permanent coach, what I would call your business coach, actually gets introduced right in the beginning, Jen. So we
Okay.
actually are building that relationship slowly. I stay with those new owners. My ultimate goal is to get them billing around 25,000 a month, because then I know that life is going really good. They're ready to move over to that business coach. The business coach and we do the same. I just do it on a very a detailed level. I meet with the owners weekly. The business coach usually meets with them about monthly. So right around, I would say 5 to 6 months after opening is right when we see the transition naturally. It usually naturally happens to the business coach where they're like, okay, I think I'm ready for that next level. I got the basics now. It's kind of how we see that happening.
Okay. Question for you. How do you, what's, what platform do you use in partnership with these new franchise owners to see how their business is doing? Is it multiple places you go to see, or is there a one-stop shop for our franchise owners to see basically the health of their business?
So we always say, well, Sky is our operational software. Everything is going to come into Well Sky, and we're going to really do our billing, our payroll, our hour. We can see the hours. So that really gives you a good idea of how to see what your current business is doing weekly or even monthly. We do have a couple other platforms that pull out of QuickBooks and really can help identify where your health of your business is at, but then also compare it to the health of a business maybe in your region or in your state. So we have a couple different ways. WellSky is the main piece, but then we have a couple other programs that really help measure your business against other businesses in the region or state.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And I hear often as a tenured franchise owner how important it is to recognize caregivers. So caregiver recognition, it's one thing to recruit them, but you need to retain those caregivers, right? And recognizing how much they mean to your business is so incredibly important, to all of our franchisees in our system. How important is it? How important is caregiver recognition from the very start for a brand new franchise owner?
It is huge because one of the pieces is when we're first opening a brand new territory, there's a lot of unknown, okay? In order to be open, we have to host our first caregiver orientation with 2 caregivers, which means you have 2 caregivers, you don't have any clients. So really fostering that relationship with those caregivers weekly, sometimes a couple times a week, is really key to keep them hot or active on your payroll. In our franchisees, there's a lot of different ideas that they throw around, but really making sure that you have soft touches. Maybe it's your first 5 caregivers that you onboarded. You're reaching out to them just to see how they're doing and checking in to say, you know what, I'm still working on finding that first client. Even after you get your first couple clients, you still want to keep those caregivers engaged. They may not take hours with your business, but what they do know is they may know friends that can refer to you that you're currently in look for. So I think that's the key piece to keeping those caregivers engaged.
Okay, and I have more questions, and a couple more questions have come, and I'm going to rapid fire through them. Excuse me. So this one says, what do you feel sets Right at Home's onboarding experience apart from other franchises?
I would say our subject matter experts and the time they give us during that entire onboarding. We have a lot of people to pull from in our corporate office that have worked hard to understand WellSky, to work hard to understand QuickBooks, or to understand the recruiting aspect, that I think pulling them in and then us staying engaged, whether the RightStart manager staying engaged with these owners, they really like that we're always there with them, whether or not it's Monday. If it's Saturday, we're always available to kind of talk them through those pieces.
And I'll answer that. That was a great answer. I'll answer it in a different way. To me, Right at Home has been around for 30 years. We've been franchising for 25 years. Our onboarding process right now is drastically different than it used to be just a few years ago, and for the better, of course, because we learn from our franchise owners. We're constantly getting feedback on it would be beneficial to train new owners on this, or I feel like this was missing, or this would be beneficial to add to the process. So we are constantly changing and refining and improving the process as we go as a franchise system. And Right at Home being around for 30 years, franchising for 25 years, this is not the first time that we've done this. We have onboarded hundreds of franchise owners. So I think that's a benefit to Right at Home, just being a more tenured franchisor, that we have all of this historical knowledge and all of these franchise owners that we have onboarded, that we learn from, and we're constantly refining the process. Okay, next question. It says, does a franchisee ever not graduate from the RightStart program?
Everybody graduates, because we're going to make sure we set them up for success. Because if they don't graduate, we're not great. So everybody graduates. We will work hard. Some, it may take a little bit longer.
That's right.
Some may go a little bit faster. Everybody's life, everybody's territory is a little bit different, but we will do whatever it takes on our end to make those owners successful so they can graduate.
Yes, got it. And I'm glad that you said that, because there are some that just go right through it and they graduate early. Some take a couple more months to kind of get to that place financially, hours wise, that we want them to be. But you're correct. Everybody graduates to some. It's just like in school, right? Some people just fly through college, and others it takes them a few additional years to get that college degree, right? So it's just like that. Okay, so time flies when you're having fun. We're almost 30 minutes in. Stacey, is there anything else that you want to add that we haven't talked about today? And you know what? You and I could talk for a long time and still not cover everything. I can't stress enough how much Stacey and her team to help and support our new franchise owners. But anything that we haven't talked about today that you feel is relevant to our listeners to hear?
I think you hit on everything. I think we talked about the journey. We talked about sometimes it goes quicker, sometimes it goes, a little slower. So yeah. We're here to work with each owner, and it's an exciting journey.
Yes. So, yes. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time, and I know that our listeners do as well. So thank you.